got a lot to cover. Last night I realized after the first session that I was like way behind schedule. Had to move real fast, so I'm going to try to move faster during this first one. And if I ask a question, if you'll jump in quick, and we'll keep a quick pace going. I want to start with just the question, what kind of homes do our children need? And if you're a young man and you're just getting married and you're picking a place to live with your wife, I'm guessing that you probably would not pick that. You'd probably say that is not a suitable place to raise children. But if you're looking through the old part of town, some old historic houses, and there was a for sale sign in front of that, you might say, I like that. That's a nice house. I could see that would be a really good place, to have a family and raise children. Who can tell me whose home is that lower picture? Abraham Lincoln, yeah. This is commemorated his birthplace. They say it may be a neighbor's cabin, they're not sure, or it may be the one he was born in, but that would have been what it would have been like, one way or the other. You want to guess who grew up in the other house? Actually, it was John Wilkes Booth. Point being, the character of the child is not determined by the quality or fanciness or size or expense of the house. And one of the things I want to stress to us, and particularly as men, is thinking about our focus of our house and our home. Those are two different things. The crying need in our culture is not better houses, it's better homes. And I don't care if you live in this house or this house or this house, what's going to happen to all of those? Yeah, they're all going to be destroyed. Seeing that these things are all to be dissolved, what manner of persons you ought to be. But inside that house, we're raising some little girls and some little guys that have souls. And long after that house is gone, an important question is where are those souls going to be? And so we need to be much more interested in the quality of our home than the quality of our house. Nothing wrong with having a nice house, but what good is a nice house if we're not providing the children in it for what they need for a home? And Leon mentioned that as we look at things like this, sometimes we think about what I've done wrong. I've made I'm far anything but a perfect parent. And some of these things, as I go over them, I'm reminded, I need to keep working on this with this one and that. But that's what we need to do with the Word of God and with things that matter, is look at what we're supposed to do, and when we see something out of adjustment, realize, do that. And so these are really important principles for us from the Word of God. The relative importance of temporary threats and external threats. These are a couple of charts I added from some other ones that aren't yours, but to just think about this, what would you do if you got home today and you found that at your house? How quickly would you get that taken care of? And particularly if it was December, you would even get it more quickly taken care of, right? How about if you went down to the basement and you looked up and you saw that? How quickly would you take action on that? Yeah. Would anybody here say, I think it's just a phase? Lots of houses get termites. It'll go away. It's, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. Would anybody do that? What if your well was found toxic? What if you found the city water lines poisoned? What if there was a gas line leaking? Or if you found your kids eating out of the neighbor's trash? You would do something about that. But what about toxic filth infiltrating our home on a moral level? How many people have made sure to caulk the windows, but they're not thinking about the influences that are penetrating their home? But whether it be from the school system or from neighborhood kids or from trash coming over the internet or trash coming over the television set or cable or something else. And we're just letting destructive filth come into our homes. There's something upside down in our thinking if we're not taking that really seriously. Read this verse with me, please, out loud. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. I believe this is a general truth, a truism. I don't think it takes away from the free will of the child, and I believe a child could choose to do something foolish later in life if he so chose. But it's like Proverbs 15:1. What is it that the Bible says turns away wrath? What kind of answer turns away wrath? A soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. That's generally so, right? Can you ever think of a time when there might be an exception to that? You have an angry drunk, and somebody tries to give a soft answer. It might not turn away his wrath. You know, there might be some exception, but that doesn't change the validity of the general rule. This is the way it works. And too often, I think this text gets ignored or not appreciated enough because people think, well, it doesn't work. And often what it is, it's that parents aren't doing the work. It's not hope that they'll go the right way. It's train them in the way they should go. And when they're old, they will not depart from it. We'll talk about the importance of training self-control into them so that later, when we're not there to control them and don't need to control them, who is controlling them? They've got self-control before who? God. What's one of the fruits of the Spirit? Self-control. So we have to get that trained into them. And this is also, well, I'm going to get a few of these charts, and then there's another chart not on your thing. So this text says if you do this, when they're old, they won't go apart from it. Judith Harris wrote a book, mentioned like pop psychology and books. I used to live near a brother and sister. They were another congregation, but I lived right near them. And so I saw what was going on with their child. And she apparently had read one of these pop psychology books that said, don't spank your child, you know, don't, et cetera, et cetera. And instead of listening to the Word of God, the child wasn't disciplined. And he would just, I would hear them yelling for him and yelling for him. I'd see him over here, you know, just ignoring them. And then later, as they call him over and over, they never do anything about the fact that he doesn't come. Later, as he goes by, I said, why didn't you go when your parents called you? He goes, I didn't hear him. His little friend says, yes, you did. And I opened my car door. There's a pile of dirt in my car that he's just piled there in the seat for him. He opened my door one time, didn't knock on the door or anything, just opened the door at like 4 or 5 years old. He's standing there. His little overalls are soaking wet in the front and they're brown in the back. And he goes, I don't have to use the bathroom. That's sad. That's it. 4 years old is one of my favorite ages. We were blessed with 6 children. We've still got 3.5 at home. One of them's in a kind of partial thing, but 4 is one of my favorite ages. And it was sad. I didn't like that 4-year-old. And that's kind of sad to say that you wouldn't like. But with that kind of behavior, the child was kind of hard to, but it wasn't the child's fault. Now, as he grew older, if he continued in those foolish ways, whose fault is it now? But at that age, if you've got a 4-year-old that's not likable and enjoyable, whose fault is that? Yes. And it was from reading books, apparently, telling them that they didn't need to discipline that child. Had a lady in Atlanta. She told me afterwards on this subject, she said, my boy had disobeyed about something. I went outside and switched him or something, gave a spanking, and my neighbor says, you ought not to do that. She said, pray tell, why not? She said, you'll change and warp his personality. She said, Lord willing, that's exactly what I'm going to do. You know, we need to train them. Now, Judith Harris wrote a book several years ago. It was reviewed in one of the news magazines, and fortunately they reviewed it and saw that it was foolishness. But she said on this nurture-nature thing, it's all nature. Parents don't make any difference. The idea of the book was, do parents really matter? And the basic answer was no. She said your children are going to be what they're going to be based on their genetics and their peers, and that's it. You don't matter. And then the article went on to say, she did say there were a few things you could do. Since they're, and the argument was, if their kids smoke cigarettes, they're going to smoke cigarettes. Well, yeah, there probably is a correlation there, but that doesn't mean parents don't matter. And if you're parenting a child and they decide to hang out with the crowd that's smoking, you've already got parents not doing their job. But she said, here's some things that you can do, because their peers, that's who they're going to be like. Your job is to make enough money to be able to live in the best school district, and to make enough money to dress them in the latest styles and fashions, because appearances are important and you want them to be accepted among the right circles at school. And you need to make enough money to do braces and plastic surgery if necessary. And that's about it. I thought about that, and this idea, if you've had more than one child, raise your hand. Did you notice that they do sometimes come into the world with different personalities, different wire? If you notice that, raise your hand. All right. So I think your makeup does show some tendencies, but I thought about this, and I think for some people, it's probably true that genetics and peers, if you include the media and culture, do almost entirely determine it. If what? In what cases does that become the dominant thing instead of the parenting?
If the parent's not involved in the child's life.
Right. If you're not involved with the child's life, if when they're right after they're born, you dump them in daycare, and other people, somebody else saw them take their first step, somebody else got called mama, somebody else this and that. Mom and dad are busy making money, getting that house and doing everything else. And then, oh, good, now we got preschool. And send them there and send them away for the summer, send them there and just trying to spend in a few minutes with the child at the end of the day. Is that going to have any effect on that child? No, it's not. So if we're not doing our job, then we shouldn't expect it to happen. A garden, everybody put in a garden. Did several of you imagine put in a garden this year? What happens to my garden if in the spring I plant seed and then come back at harvest time to see what I got? What am I going to have?
Weeds.
I'm going to have weeds. And then I look over at my neighbor's garden, and he's got beautiful squash and tomatoes and peppers and beans and everything. And I say, oh, you're so lucky. Your vegetables are easy. You've ever heard people say that? Well, what's the difference between my garden and his garden?
One was tended.
Yeah. And in tending a garden, what are some of the things you got to do? Pull the weeds. You've got invasive things. You got to pull the weeds. Water it. Fertilize it. Make sure it has nutrients that it needs. And if you got some rabbits in there, you're wanting to come chew up all your plants, you need to protect it. So he took care of his garden and he tended it. That's why he ended up with this nice crop. I planted some seed and hoped that I would have the results that my neighbor's going to have. It's not going to work that way. The weeds are going to win. A cat, a bird. How long does it take from the time an egg cracks open and that bird comes out until that bird is out on its own and doesn't need its mama anymore? Yeah, is this real quick? Human beings, how long does it take? Ironically, we're getting to it. There's been a societal change. So psychologists are trying to come up with a term to describe what's now an extended adolescence that goes into the 20s and 30s. And there's a problem there. We're not training young men to be men. But it does take a long time before they're able to go out and be on their own. You can't leave a baby on its own at 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. God gave us a huge amount of time to raise that child. What does that suggest? Yeah, it takes a lot of work. And we're given time that we can use then to train them to learn more than how to eat a worm. And that time needs to be used. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7, it said, what are we supposed to do with our children? The fathers in Israel were told what? Talk to them about these things when? When you rise up, when you lay down, when you sit down, when you're going in the way. Is that make sure that you take them to Bible class on Sunday and Wednesday? No, that's in the home, there needs to be ongoing care. Who is it in Ephesians 6 that's told to bring the children up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord? Fathers, all right? And then we're going to talk about early child training and no. We're not going to spend quite as much time on this here as we did yesterday, just to mention. No is one of the first kids that words that a little kid learns. And if we teach our children when they're little to respect the word no and submit to the word no, you've laid the foundation for you really got about half the job done. Because if you get, when he's a little bitty guy, if he understands when mom says no, when dad says no, that means no. And so they don't do it. How is that so fundamental that it's got the framework for most of the training still to come? Why is that so important? Yes, we're here and they learn to obey us as preparation for learning to obey a much more important Father. And so then they've learned self-denial, that you don't get to do everything you want to do. When it's no, it's no. And self-control, what else? It's just, they've learned to submit their will, they've learned to respect authority, they've learned all these things, and so then later as you teach them more advanced things, the structure is there to be able to accept that. But if with the no, they can get around it, they can argue their way through it, they can cut the edges, they can justify themselves. Well, what's going to happen when you get to other more complicated rules? Yeah, you're going to have and then how are they going to, have you ever seen members in a church act that way before God? So this is just really crucial. In the Garden of Eden, God gives them a rule in Genesis chapter 2, verse 17. What was the rule? Yeah. He picked out one tree and he said what? No, no. This is a no, no. Adam and Eve are physically, developed, and they're able to have language and everything, but how much life experience do they have on the day they're created? I don't know what day they ate from the tree, but on the day they were created, if you were looking at them, there's a man and there's a woman, but how long have they been around? Yeah. And at some point there, when they've got this rule and she decides to violate it, God has said, no, no. And Eve goes for the no-no and then gives it to Adam. And then God kicks him out of the garden. The children of Israel coming out of Egypt, now they've been around like we've been around and had different experiences in life, but they're still very immature. I mean, you look at their behavior in the wilderness. You got a bunch of illiterate slaves for the most part coming out of Egypt that keep looking only at what's in front of their face and not long term. Very immature people. And in the 10 Commandments, the greatest commandments were what? Jesus told us what the greatest commandments were. The greatest commandment is with all your heart, soul, and mind. That's a vertical relationship. And the second commandment, that's a horizontal relationship. He said everything else depends on that. Paul said in Romans 13, if you'll love your neighbor as yourself, that's going to take care of what? You're not going to kill him. You're not going to steal from him. You're not going to sleep with his wife. That's all going to be covered in that. But the Ten Commandments give some specifics, and most of them are what? No-nos. No on the killing. No on the stealing. No on the bearing false witness. Don't do that. And with our children, just when we get them to understand that no, that's really valuable. And there needs to be a respect for the compliance and prohibitory no. And let me say this on that before getting to the next point. It's the difference between the child, and you don't do this just in case they run out into the street. But if they start to run out in the street, you see the value of it, you see the difference in the children. A ball goes out in the street, child starts to run for it, the mother sees and she says, no, stop. And one child stops. He doesn't know why, but why does he stop? Mom said no. Another child who, no, don't do that. No, I said, no, put that down. No, don't make me tell you again. No, I'm going to count to 10. Are you listening to me? I'm going to tell your father. He starts to run out into the street after the ball, and the mom sees, and she sees the truck coming. She says, no. And what's he do? Yeah. Now, you might say, well, but most kids don't get hit by trucks. Yeah, but most kids end up living selfish lives, destructive lives, and not doing what God said, which is worse than getting hit by a truck. So get them to where they respect that prohibitory no, but then there's got to be zero tolerance for the defiant no. Because those little guys learn that no is a powerful word, right? So one day, mom says, pick up your toys or eat your beans. And he says what? No. worked, no. That may happen one time. Don't let it happen 2 times. Don't get mad, don't blow your stack, but, let your face and your voice realize, oh, this, it's like, this is serious. And explain to them and then have the consequences of them and then have a long lecture and really punish them for that and say, you can never, ever, you can say no thank you. If mom says, would you like, some more ice cream? No thank you. Would you like to do this? No thank you. But to give it, never tolerate that. I was with mom one time and she would repeatedly call me up and say, do you hear what he's doing? Do you hear what he's doing? Listen, I told him to do his homework and listen. And he yelled, screamed, maybe say he hates her, different things. I didn't always hear that, but she would report it. Sometimes I would take him with me. And because she would say, I think there's something wrong with him. And he'd be a good kid with me, and one time he'd say, well, because he won't obey, and he's such a bad attitude and everything. And I said, he doesn't do that when he's with, well, that's because he's with, I said, if there was something defective with him that he couldn't act right, he wouldn't be able to act right around the rest of us. She had allowed a toxic relationship to develop between herself and the child, and one of the things was she just wouldn't deal things. One time we were sitting there, we were having a Bible study, and she told him to go downstairs. And he went, but before he went, no. And then he went, real quiet. She didn't know I heard, but a few minutes later, I don't know why. And I said, because you're not consistent. You let him get away with that no a while ago. She goes, you heard that? I said, yeah, but it's like, you're just asking for trouble. And of course, for years, she had what kind of relationship going on there? Miserable, because what? Yeah, one time she said, I don't have time to deal with every act of disobedience. If you don't deal with each act of disobedience, what's going to happen? Yeah, it's going to be multiplied. All right, let me move on here. We've got to start making a lot of progress, sorry. If you don't mean it, don't say it. If you do mean it, enforce it. Jesus said, let your yes be yes, and your no be. And good parenting is not how many rules you have, okay? Tell me where the child's going to come out better. Home 1 has this many rules, and they're enforced. Home 2 has this many rules, but they're not enforced and they're not consistent. Where's the child going to come out okay? Yeah, maybe in your home you allow balls to be thrown in the house. if that's in your home. But you don't allow this or that. You know, you take off your shoes. We don't want and stuff. Well, what that teaches them is you go by the rules. And then if they go visit somebody else's house, they're able to learn what? In that house, they don't allow ball throwing in that house. Or in that house, they don't allow shoes. But you learn, you obey the rules. And so, but when you have a child that here's the rules and you can ignore them, then you're in trouble. Learning to submit to an earthly father prepares them for submission to a far more important father. One other thing before we get directly into the parenting pitfalls part is this, and this had been in the other one, some other versions, but it was not in this set of slides, and I'll put it back in here. Humility. I've noticed sometimes among brethren, and among sometimes some families that you would expect good things to happen from their kids. Families where the kids are really involved at church, maybe they're skilled or talented in some different things, but then, like there was one father, he's a good guy now, but I remember at one point, the father was always kind of, the father eventually came to me one day, and he was just frustrated with his son. And I said, well, let me ask you a couple questions. I said, would you say that your son is, I picked some qualities I knew he had. I said, would you say that your son is zealous? He said, oh yeah. I said, would you say he's conscientious? Yes. I said, would you say that your son is humble? He went, no. Well, the fact is he hadn't trained him to be humble. You know, from when he was little, he wanted his son to be. We need to train humility. Proverbs chapter 6, there's 6 yea, 7 things that are an abomination to God. What's number 1 on the list? Yeah, haughty eyes. Pride is one sin that can thrive within a religious setting. Because we can get proudful about who we are. How did the Pharisee pray? God, I thank you that I am so good. Pride is an ugly, ugly thing. And pride goeth before destruction and a haughty spirit before the fall. There's the fool test. If you've got some kids, do the fool test on each of your kids. Somebody read, I want quickly, let's have these passages read. Somebody start with Proverbs 15:5. Somebody be open to Proverbs 1:7, and then 12:1 and 15. What's 15:5 say? Okay, so a fool hates to be corrected by his father. The wise one does what? Yeah, there's another proverb, I don't have it up there, but it says, reprove a wise man, correct a wise man, and he'll be wiser still. Correct a fool, and he'll hate it. All right, somebody please read Proverbs 1, verse 7.
Fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction.
Proverbs 12, verse 1.
Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid.
Now, think about your children. Which ones hate to be reproved? You got some work to do on that one, or those two. This is fundamental. Have we ever been fools? Have we ever hated and despised knowledge? Yes. And guess what that is? That verse one more time. Proverbs 12:1. Yeah, he who hates reproof is stupid. I've been stupid. I imagine some of you have been stupid. And part of the time our kids have been stupid. And it's our job to stop being stupid and to get the stupid out of them. Apply that fool to. And I remember one time, one of these young men I was thinking in particular, just a huge ego problem. Great song leader, huge ego problem. I talked to him one time, he said, well, I'm a teenager, of course I'm egotistical. And another time he said, I just like to be the center of attention. There are some men who are not going to go to heaven. who never are willing to say, I was wrong. I'm sorry. You ever known men like that? Sometimes there's men that are somewhat, I remember being in a congregation one time and one brother made the observation about another brother. I've never heard him say he was wrong about anything. That's not a compliment. Have we ever been wrong about anything? What is it that as men sometimes causes us to not want to say I was wrong? Pride. If I say I was wrong, then I look weak. Okay? If I've just done something wrong to you, how do I already look? I already look bad. Then you say something to me about it and I refuse to admit it, or I lie about it, or I try to justify it. Have I made myself look better? If I refuse to say I'm wrong, do you walk away thinking, wow, he's perfect? Who's the only person being deceived there? Ourselves. If you grew up in a home where your father never ever admitted he was wrong or never ever apologized, did that fool you into thinking he never made a mistake? If we're married to a woman, we never admit when we're wrong and we never apologize, does that convince her that we were always right? All have sinned, fall short of the glory of God. When we do something wrong, we need to own up to it. When somebody says, I was wrong about that, thanks for pointing that out, does that make us respect them less or respect them more? Jesus said those that exalt themselves are going to be, those that humble themselves will be exalted. All right, let's move on now to, so make sure to train humility in there. And if they resent correction, sit down and take some, and listen, you might have a guy that just has a defiant attitude and a lot of angst and some different things going on. Take some real time. Take a day or two. Say, son, you and I are going to go on a camping trip or something. We're going to spend a couple of days together just talking about life and some of these things. Kids can get to the point where when they hear the same kind of statement, why can't your attitude be better? Why can't, or something like that. Show that this is important enough to you that you invest your time. It's like Dad's taking a couple of days to go with me somewhere. Dad's, taking it to sit and talk with me and get in a situation where you're really getting his attention. Make sure he knows you're taking it serious. All right, quickly here, because we're about to run out of time for the first session. We need to make some movement here so we can get farther in a second. Common mistakes to avoid, parenting pitfalls. Number one, just failing to discipline, like with that little boy I told you about before, wet on the front and brown in the back. He who spares his rod hates his son. He who loves him disciplines him how? Diligently, Proverbs 13. Discipline your son while what? While there's hope. Like clay. After a while it sets. When do you need to be doing the work? While it's pliable. Proverbs 22:15. Foolishness is in the heart of the child. What'll get it from it? The rod or reproof. Don't hold back discipline from the child. Although you strike him with the rod, he will not die. Proverbs 23:13. The rod and reproof bring wisdom, but a child who gets his own way is going to bring what? Shame to his mother. Correct your son, he will give you comfort. He will delight your soul. Mistake number two, rewarding misbehavior. Who would ever reward misbehavior? Parents do it all the time. And they might think, no, why would I reward misbehavior? That's a good question, but they do it. You remember the pirates in Somalia a few years ago? How many people were surprised that we had a real problem with pirates in this day and age? I was shocked. They were like, really? Pirates? So why were they doing it? Because they would grab a ship, they would take it over there to Somalia, and then the company or country it was from would drop $1 million or so in a bag in the ocean, and they would release the ship. By giving them that money, what did they just do? They rewarded misbehavior. So then what did the pirates do? They did it again, and it kept getting rewarded. You reward misbehavior. When a child is misbehaving, the last thing he should get is what he wants. You don't give a child that's misbehaving what they want. If you do, you've just asked them to keep doing it. Why do children throw tantrums? Yeah, have you ever seen that in the grocery store? You know, the little kid, you know, I want that, I want that. No, we can't get it. I want it, I want to get it. I'm going, no, I said that we can't get that. You keep your voice up. I want that, give me that. Shh, shh. You know, we can't get that today. Yeah, I hate you, you're a mean mommy. Give me it, I want it now. She goes, shh, you're embarrassing me. Who already knew that? Yeah, does he know? Why is he getting louder and such? He's embarrassing mom because he knows if he screams and pitches a fit loud enough, there's a chance of what's going to happen. Okay. She's rewarding misbehavior. Letting a child get his way is not doing him a favor. It will spoil him. Letting a child get his way will not satisfy him. It will spoil him. There was a study down about a playground without a fence. The kids congregated in the middle. They put a fence in, they felt free to play all over the place. Why? Now they know where the boundaries are. They know where they're safe, they know where they can be, they know where other people can't be. Kids thrive with boundaries. If you've had children in your home who come from a house without boundaries and there's chaos and it's all dependent on mood or anger or soberness or drunkenness, they get in your home, what's one of the things they love about being there? There's rules there they don't have at home. There's accountability, but they love it there. Why? Yeah, there's security, there's stability, that type of thing there. Let's do about one more minute here and stop. Letting a child will not satisfy them. I heard about this, and this really happened because I ended up finding the family that saw it happen. In Florida years ago, there was a well-to-do family, you know, nice drapes and everything, interior decorating. None of them were hanging upright because this kid had pulled them all down. Brother was there holding a meeting at this house. And he witnessed this happen. They fixed the child breakfast and the child said, I don't want it. And then they said, well, what do you want? I want a worm. And so they went and got out in the garden or whatever, found a worm, put it there. I want it cooked. So they put it in the skillet and they fried it. I want it cut in two. So they cut it in two. I want you to eat half of it. And the parent actually ate half of the worm. And then the child went, I don't want it. The child was just about literally asking for it. And the parent, you know, who was the fool there? They're raising a fool, but there was a big fool standing there not understanding at all what it takes to parent. The difference between a boy and a pig, give both of them everything they want, you'll get a really tasty pig and you'll get a really, really rotten boy. The rod and reproof bring wisdom, but a child who gets his own way brings shame to his mother. All right, we'll stop there and pick up in a few minutes. Thank you.